This sound didn't just signal an attack, it broke armies before the bomb even hit. In 1939, this aircraft became the most feared weapon in Europe, not because of its firepower, but because of what it did to the human mind. This was the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, the aircraft that turned fear into a weapon. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles completely banned Germany from developing military aircraft. On paper, German military aviation was dead, but in reality, it was only sleeping. Throughout the 1920s and early 1930s, German engineers worked in secrecy, officially designing civilian aircraft while quietly experimenting with military ideas. One concept obsessed German planners more than anything else: precision. They believed that instead of dropping bombs blindly, an aircraft should dive straight at its target and destroy it with surgical accuracy. From this idea, the Stuka was born. The Ju-87 was never meant to be beautiful. It was slow, bulky, and awkward looking, with fixed landing gear and its famous inverted gull wings. But every part of the aircraft existed for one reason only: to dive steeply toward the ground, release its bomb at the perfect moment, and pull out at the last second. The Stuka was not built to fight other aircraft. It was built to shatter enemy positions and crush resistance from the sky. So now the question is, if Germany was banned from military aviation, how did it build a fleet? When Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, Germany threw away the Treaty of Versailles and began rearming openly. The Luftwaffe was officially created, and secret aircraft projects were suddenly rushed into full-scale production. The Ju-87 fit perfectly into Nazi Germany's new style of warfare: Blitzkrieg. In simple words, aircraft would smash enemy defences, tanks would break through, and the enemy would collapse before they could react. But before World War II even began, the Stuka needed to prove itself. That opportunity came during the Spanish Civil War. Germany secretly sent pilots and aircraft to support Franco's forces. Among those aircraft were early versions of the Ju-87. Spain became the Stuka's testing ground. There, German pilots discovered just how devastating dive bombing could be. Bridges, supply convoys, and defensive positions were destroyed with terrifying accuracy. Just as important, they saw the psychological effect. Enemy troops panicked when Stukas appeared overhead. By the time the Spanish Civil War ended, the Luftwaffe was convinced. When World War II began in 1939, the Stuka was no longer an experiment. It was a core weapon of Nazi Germany and a symbol of the coming storm. So it was incredibly accurate, but why was it so feared? The truth is, the Stuka's greatest weapon wasn't its bombs, it was the psychological fear it created on the ground. The fear didn't come from its speed or firepower, it came from the mind. When a Stuka appeared overhead, soldiers often heard it before they saw it. As the aircraft entered its steep dive, a mechanical siren mounted on the landing gear began to scream. This sound became known as the Jericho trumpet, and it was designed for one purpose: terror. The wailing noise echoed across battlefields, signaling that death was about to fall from the sky. Even hardened troops described the sound as paralyzing. The psychological impact was devastating. Soldiers scattered, broke formation, or abandoned positions before the bomb even hit. Civilians panicked. Entire units lost cohesion. The Stuka turned fear itself into a weapon, amplifying the destruction far beyond the size of its bombs. But the terror was not just noise, it was precision. Unlike level bombers that dropped bombs from high altitude, the Stuka attacked by diving almost vertically toward its target. Pilots could see exactly what they were aiming at, and release their bomb at the last possible moment. This made the Ju-87 one of the most accurate bombers of its time. In early campaigns, Stuka pilots could hit targets within just a few meters. For troops on the ground, it felt as if the aircraft was hunting them personally. Now how the Stuka actually worked. The Stuka's design was built entirely around one extreme maneuver: the dive. Its inverted gull wings were not just for appearance, they provided structural strength and stability during near vertical dives. The aircraft was reinforced to survive forces that would tear ordinary planes apart. Without this strength, pilots could black out or lose control when pulling out of the dive. To make dive bombing possible for average pilots, the Ju-87 was equipped with a dive brake system. As the aircraft plunged downward, these brakes slowed the Stuka enough to maintain control and accuracy. Just as important, the aircraft included an automatic pull-out system. If a pilot blacked out under the extreme G-forces, the system could automatically level the aircraft and save both pilot and plane. This made the Stuka unusually forgiving. Even the bomb itself was carefully engineered. A special swinging cradle pushed the bomb clear clear of the propeller when released, preventing it from striking the aircraft during a steep dive. The Ju-87 was less an aircraft and more a flying weapon system designed to deliver fear and precision in equal measure. When World War II began in September 1939, the Ju-87 Stuka finally had its moment. In the invasion of Poland, the Stuka became the spearhead of German air power. Polish airfields, bridges, rail lines, and troop concentrations were struck with devastating accuracy. Stuka attacks shattered communications and trapped entire units, allowing German ground forces to advance rapidly. For many Polish soldiers, the war began with the scream of dive bombers overhead. The same pattern repeated in Norway and Denmark. Stukas attacked coastal defences, harbours, and key strongpoints, clearing the way for German landings. In mountainous terrain and narrow valleys, their precision proved deadly. Wherever resistance appeared, Stukas were called in to crush it from above, but it was during the invasion of France and the Low Countries in 1940 that the Stuka became legendary. Stukas flew mission after mission in direct coordination with German tank columns, striking enemy positions only minutes before armoured units arrived. This tight cooperation between air and ground forces made Blitzkrieg unstoppable. The reason the Stuka worked so well during this phase was simple. Germany controlled the skies. Allied fighter forces were either destroyed on the ground, poorly coordinated, or caught completely off guard. When enemy fighters did appear, Stukas usually operated under the protection of German Messerschmitt Bf-109s. With air superiority guaranteed, the Ju-87 could do what it was designed to do. But the Ju-87 Stuka was not perfect. It had issues. For instance, it could not survive without control of the sky. The aircraft was slow, heavy, and poorly armed for air combat. Its fixed landing gear created massive drag, and its low top speed made it an easy target. Against modern fighter aircraft, the Stuka was almost defenseless. The Stuka's entire design depended on calm conditions. It needed time to line up its dive, descend steeply, release its bomb, and pull out. During this process, it became predictable. Enemy fighters quickly learned that a diving or climbing Stuka was vulnerable, especially after releasing its bomb. Once intercepted, escape was nearly impossible. Even its fearsome reputation could not save it. The Jericho trumpet, which once terrified ground troops, also announced the Stuka's position to enemy pilots. What had been a psychological weapon became a tactical liability. In skies filled with hostile fighters, the Stuka was no longer a hunter, it was prey. As long as German fighters dominated the air, the Stuka thrived. But the moment that protection weakened, the aircraft's limitations were brutally exposed. So to sum it up, it survived only when Germany controlled the skies. The downfall of the Ju-87 Stuka began in the skies over Britain. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, Germany no longer had total air superiority. British radar, coordinated fighter control, and large numbers of fast Hurricanes and Spitfires changed everything. When Stukas crossed the English Channel, they were intercepted again and again. Losses mounted rapidly. Entire formations were torn apart before they could even reach their targets. Within weeks, the Luftwaffe was forced to withdraw the Stuka from daylight operations over Britain. The terror weapon had met an enemy it could not escape. From that moment on, the Stuka's role began to shrink. As the war dragged on, enemy fighters became faster, more numerous, and better coordinated. On the Eastern Front, Stukas initially found success against Soviet forces, but as Soviet air power recovered, the same problems returned. By 1942 and beyond, the Ju-87 could no longer operate freely in contested airspace. Germany tried to adapt the aircraft for new roles. Later versions carried cannons for attacking tanks, and some units continued to use the Stuka in areas with weak enemy air defences, but these were stopgap measures. The aircraft was already outdated. Faster fighter bombers like the FW-190 could deliver similar firepower while defending themselves. By 1944, the Stuka had largely disappeared from frontline service. What had once been the screaming symbol of Blitzkrieg was now a relic of an earlier phase of the war. The Ju-87 did not fail because it was poorly designed. It failed because it was designed for a world where Germany controlled the skies. When that world disappeared, the Stuka's era ended with it.